Totally Vegan here, and welcome to my second episode regarding the 12 hallmarks of aging and how to live a longer and healthier life by slowing down these classic hallmarks with a whole food, plant-based diet. In this second episode, I'll be discussing how a plant-based diet applies the brakes for the tendency of cellular structures called telomeres to become shorter and shorter as we age. And why should you care if your telomeres continually get shorter? Well, because these tiny structures literally keep our chromosomes from falling apart, as they serve as end caps to keep our strands of DNA from unraveling. But they also prevent the ends of chromosomes from fusing with one another, and if this were to happen, suffice it to say, it would trigger a cascade of catastrophic genetic consequences. That's why. Yet with each cell division, a tiny piece of each protective telomere falls off. And there comes a point when these little end caps eventually become too short, and when this happens, those cells can no longer divide. They either die or they become what is referred to as senescent. Senescent cells continue to live, but they become troublemakers by causing inflammation. But obviously, there comes a point when the continual shortening of telomeres becomes incompatible with life. And for this reason, this concept is regarded as one of the 12 hallmarks of aging. However, if one embraces a whole food, plant-based diet, this helps slow down the process where our telomeres become shorter as we age. And the primary way this is accomplished is by reducing inflammation, which is the primary driver for virtually all forms of modern chronic disease and mortality. And in this regard, we again encounter several of those superstar phytonutrients which have been associated with other health-promoting benefits. They include curcumin from turmeric, polyphenols found in green tea and cacao powder, and resveratrol from red wine, grapes, and berries. However, with regard to resveratrol, as I've mentioned before, you will need to take it in supplemental form, as those food sources I just mentioned simply do not have enough resveratrol to be of any benefit with regard to preventing telomere attrition. For example, a glass of red wine typically contains only about 1 milligram of resveratrol, in which case one would need to drink about 150 glasses of red wine per day. Fortunately, supplemental resveratrol is not particularly expensive with regard to other supplements. In addition, there are 2 potent anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids which also help maintain the length of telomeres, and they are referred to as DHA and EPA. That said, one must be aware that there are 2 broad categories of omega-3 fatty acids, and they are both health-promoting, but for different reasons. There is the short-chain form, with the best sources found in flaxseed, chia seed, walnuts, and hemp seeds. And there are the long-chain forms known as DHA and EPA, which are widely recognized as being found in cold water fish. Although true, there's a great vegan source for DHA and EPA, and it's found in marine algae. But again, getting enough DHA and EPA from marine algae will require taking it in supplemental form. But I also need to mention that there are 2 herbs which actually activate the enzyme responsible for restoring telomere length, as opposed to just slowing down the process of continual shortening. Both of these herbs have been used for centuries in traditional Chinese medicine, and they've always been associated with health and longevity, Yet Western medicine basically wrote those presumed health benefits off as folklore. That is, of course, until scientific research showed these two herbs actually do activate the enzyme responsible for increasing the length of telomeres. One of these herbs is astragalus, and the other one is even more potent, and it's called gatucola. But I probably should mention that there is yet another metabolic process where the enzyme responsible for increasing telomere length is also activated, and that is with cancer. The key difference here is that astragalus and gatucola activate the telomere lengthening enzyme in a beneficial way because this effect is short-term or transient, whereas the activation of cancer cells is totally uncontrolled and non-stop. At any rate, the elderly vegan, being the quintessential overachiever that he is, includes gatucola in his faith-based biohacking supplementary program, and hoping this ancient herb from traditional Chinese medicine lives up to its reputation by increasing telomere length. I might also mention there are thousands of bioactive phytonutrients from a whole food plant-based diet which also help protect against telomere shortening. In fact, even an increase in dietary fiber has independently been associated with longer telomeres. Apparently, with every 10-gram increase of fiber in one's diet, there is an additional 4 years added to your biological age with regard to telomere attrition. And keep in mind that most Americans get only about half the recommended 30 grams or so of fiber each day, while vegans on a whole food plant-based diet will blow 30 grams of fiber clean out of the water by exceeding the recommended daily amount by a wide margin. But I might also mention that in addition to dietary choices which slow the attrition of telomere length, there are at least 3 lifestyle modifications which also help accomplish this effect. These lifestyle modifications include regular aerobic exercise, stress reduction, and adequate sleep. In fact, all 3 of these lifestyle modifications sound spot on for promoting health and vitality in general. And it's also probably worthwhile to know what foods to stay away from which cause the opposite effect by causing an increased rate of telomere shortening. Those foods include sugary sodas, processed meats, alcohol, and refined carbohydrates. And diets high in saturated fat, specifically from whole milk, butter, and cheese, are also implicated in shortening one's telomeres at an accelerated rate. Regrettably, if optimal health and longevity are of any priority whatsoever, one will be obliged to take personal responsibility in this regard, as American novelist Wendell Berry summed it up perfectly in his statement. People are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. To your good health, the elderly vegan.